Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see a full hall on a Saturday afternoon. But I think this marks what a great assembly this has been. And now we are on our final plenary session with the chairmanship of the Arctic Council. Kenneth Høegh, Arctic Ambassador from the Kingdom of Denmark, chair of the senior Arctic officials in the Arctic Council. And also with us, Gunn-Britt Retter, head of the Arctic and Environmental Unit from the Saami Council. So there has been a lot of talk about the Arctic Council at this assembly. And I have heard different things said. Some say the Arctic Council is not functioning at all after the illegal invasion of Russia into Ukraine. Others say that the Arctic Council is actually the only multilateral organization actually functioning in these difficult times. And as you know, Arctic Council is made up of the 8 Arctic states and the 6 permanent participants, the indigenous peoples. So what we are going to talk about, we want to know really what is really happening, Kenneth. We are going to begin with you after I mentioned already the Russian invasion. But to add to the problems of the Arctic Council, we had a declaration from the President of the United States saying that he would like to acquire Greenland, which obviously had some effect into the mood in the Arctic Council. So tell us what things are really like. How have things been progressing under your chairmanship?
Yeah, I would say that the Arctic Council is very much alive and kicking. But of course, we are in a challenging situation. We all know that. But I think, but it's also important to recognize the Tromsø statement that we had in May. All 8 Arctic states, all 6 permanent participants were behind this statement. And that's a clear mandate to me, to the chairship, of to ensure that this cooperation endures and thrives. And that's very much the task for us to ensure that.
But there hasn't been any political dialogue with Russia since 22. So would you say that the Arctic Council is a jeep that's driving in a low gear?
Yes, it's true that we don't have a political cooperation. We have a diplomatic, we work on the diplomatic level. But it's very important to, first of all, to mention the working groups of the Arctic Council, which is really the backbone, which is really what makes the Arctic Council. Mm-hmm. And they are working. I mean, yes, they started as all on a written procedure level after 22. Mm-hmm. But last year it was actually decided to restart the working group on a virtual level, and now the working groups are actually working on a virtual level. The plenary meetings are held in a virtual level, and I had the pleasure both this month and last month to listen to the negotiations, the talks in the working groups. And I realized that things are actually happening. Projects are being discussed. New activities are being initiated. So I think it's still alive and kicking, very much so.
Alive and kicking. Gunn-Britt, you have a long experience of working with the Arctic Council. And I wanted to ask you specifically, how have the indigenous people around the Arctic, the permanent participants, reacted to this challenge that there hasn't been a political dialogue? As Kenneth says, the working groups have been working now, but what interaction has there been between the indigenous peoples around the Arctic? Have the Russian communities been participating?
Yes, thank you for that question. We heard that there are online meetings with the working groups and permanent participants engaged in this. But the first in-person meeting after the restart and when Norway took over the chairship was actually an in-person meeting of the permanent participants in October 2023, where all the 6 indigenous peoples organizations were able to meet, also with Ripon, who came from the Russian side. It was close. We were in Kirkenes, so it's on the border. So we were very happy to see that we were actually able to have that meeting. So we are, with the Kingdom of Denmark, have continued to invite to this practice where the permanent participants, indigenous peoples organizations, are meeting with the chairship. Unfortunately, some, Ripon in particular, has been online recently, but it's their choice and their opportunity.
But is there a tension in the communication?
I think what our cultures as indigenous peoples and the challenges we are facing as Arctic indigenous peoples with climate change, environmental change and pollution, that binds us, and the colonial history binds us. So, and our concerns of the future are binding us as indigenous peoples. Of course, it's not fully business as usual, but when we have met, we have been able to talk about the things that matter for us, and I don't know, that might be a naive approach, but at least I'm very happy that we are able to meet brothers and sisters, and also looking at the map, how vast the Russian region is, and and there are many indigenous peoples. I wish we could meet more freely and speak freely, but we are focusing on the mandate of the Arctic Council, which is climate change, environment, and sustainable development.
Kenneth?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize as well that it's a consensus-based council, and we actually had in-person consultations this autumn with all senior Arctic officials, and as well as the permanent participants. We met with them. We met with them actually here, and also with the working groups chairs. And this is all to align and move forward.
The Arctic Council met here in Reykjavik in 2021, and at that point, everybody agreed upon a 10-year strategy for the Arctic Council, very focused on climate and environment, because, as was stated, climate change is happening faster in the Arctic than anywhere else, melting ice sheets that are not politics, but facts, etc. So is that discussion going strong in the Arctic Council now with the situation that has been on the political level, where we see a very different emphasis on climate now than in 21? And as you say, Gunn-Britt, this is probably the most important issue for the indigenous people around the Arctic, that we deal effectively and strongly with the climate crisis.
Yeah, well, it's no doubt that indigenous peoples that still base our cultures on the natural surroundings are also the first ones impacted by climate change. So we have wildfires, greening, icing, thawing, all creating challenges and impacting our livelihoods directly. Secondly, we are carrying a double burden, particularly in Saami community, where the states where we live in are looking to our lands for also solutions. So we have to also carry the green energy solutions on our land, seeking alternative energy on mining and for minerals, for batteries and wind turbines, etc. So in a time where we need more flexibility to adapt based on our indigenous knowledge, we are challenged with fragmented land and nature destruction while we are seeking the solutions. But I'm glad you mentioned the strategic plan, because there are actually things in the strategic plan that we could bring to the table and discuss or work on in the working groups without mentioning climate change. If we look at the disturbances that we are facing, like with a sharper lens, by addressing wildfires as a disturbance to and looking at the impacts of fires and the causes of the fires, and looking at the shift in fish stocks or the diminishing of the salmon species, we can look at the causes and we can look at the solutions for this without even mentioning climate change, but knowing that that is caused by climate change.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention it. But when you don't have a political dialogue within the Arctic Council, can you really push for the agenda that was agreed upon in 2021, for example, concerning climate and environment?
Yes, and that's where we got the dialogue among the senior Arctic officials as diplomatic representatives of the governments. So, we still have that, and I believe it's important that we still continue to push for more projects and more activities within the Arctic Council to address the challenges and opportunity present. And there we need the dialogue, and we are having that dialogue.
And I think it's extremely important points that you mentioned, Gunn-Britt, concerning that there is a dilemma when it comes to the lands of the indigenous peoples and the green solutions, because there needs to be a balance. But now we will open the floor for questions on the Arctic Council, and I would like to see some light in the room so I can see your hands going up, because I know there will be some questions. Yes, I have a question here. Do we have a microphone? And please raise your hands because we have a few minutes for questions. Please.
Thank you. My name is Trine Jonassen. I'm a journalist with High North News. My question is to Mr. Høegh. Are we slowly but surely bringing Russia back into the warmth, even though the war is still raging? Thank you.
Kenneth.
I didn't get it.
Slowly but surely bringing Russia back, even though the war is still waging. Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that we are still 8 countries, 8 Arctic states working together, and 6 permanent participants. We are still in difficult times. There's no doubt about that. It's not business as usual, but we try on the best possible way to make the council work as good as possible, and that's the reason it was important for me to emphasize that the council is working, the council is progressing, even though we don't have the direct political dialogue.
Okay, we have time for some more questions. So,
waving over there.
Yes, there is a hand over there.
Thanks very much. Jim Gamble with Pacific Environment, coming to you from Anchorage, Alaska. Recognizing that the work of the council is really within the working groups, and also recognizing that there's an important role for observer organizations and observer countries, for that matter, to play, do you think there are going to be opportunities for more observers to join the council? Knowing that now is kind of an unusual time, but still, more inputs, more resources, more interest in the Arctic from observers perhaps can take up some of the slack. So do you feel an opportunity for more observers to become part of the council?
There is no doubt a willingness and an interest from other actors and states to join the group of observers. No doubt about that. But I guess we are waiting better times for taking those decisions. But when mentioning the working groups, I believe we have a very good dialogue with the present observers, both between the observers and the chairship, but also between there is a good possibility for the observers to participate and engage with the work of the working groups. And please, the working groups has always been the core of the Arctic Council.
How does that reflect the question of more observers for the permanent participants?
Well, Saami Council's approach have always been, also in 2013, when there was a whole lot of new observer applications, is that it's better to have them in and talking with us rather than hanging out somewhere else and creating other plans that we don't know of. And it's of course important for Saami Council and I guess for other indigenous peoples organizations in Arctic Council too, that we have this arena where we have a permanent seat and can be part of the discussions. So also, because observers might not invite us to, which they actually do, but invite us to their fora if their other fora were created. So Arctic Council is therefore very important for us also in the work with observers.
Okay, have them inside the tent. I have time. Here we have a question.
This is Kanagavali Suryanarayanan from UIT. It's wonderful to hear about the observers. I know the Arctic Council's approach has been to include, but hedge. Do you see the observers could be given more role in the Arctic Council? Because they are limited in their role at the moment. You can't fund beyond a particular amount. You only have to do the written submissions. There's a lot more restriction. I know this is not the time, but because of the change in the world order and the shift, do you see there is a necessity to give more role to the observers? Thank you.
The Arctic Council is based on the principle of consensus, and what we can decide on, we can decide on. I think there are still quite a few possibilities for observers to engage, and we have for instance, in terms of the observer states, we have the Warsaw format, which is a very good venue for the observers to have a dialogue with the Arctic Council Secretariat and with the chairship as such. And so there are quite a bit of possibilities for the observers, as well as the engagement in the working groups.
Our time is nearly up, but I want to give you 30 seconds each to tell me, because not many years have passed since 21 when we agreed upon the strategy, but so many things have happened. So in 30 seconds, Gunn-Britt, where will the Arctic Council be in, let's say, 5 years?
Well, it's hard to predict the future, but I have to remain positive and wishful of that we will still be live and kicking and producing. But I will also use the last 10 seconds to just leave it hanging there that Arctic Council actually has been nominated to the Nobel Peace Prize twice, in 2018 and 2022, as a model for peaceful cooperation and dialogue among nations, particularly in the face of challenges like climate change and globalization.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Yeah, the Arctic Council is irreplaceable. It's a unique thing, and there's no structure like the Arctic Council where states and indigenous peoples sit around the same table discussing issues. And I think that the Arctic Council will be and is resilient. We will still see cooperation in 10 years' time, and we will still have this continuous talk among all parties. And we have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility to the people of the Arctic and the generations that follows after us to continue this extremely important cooperation. I'll just tell you a little story. I've told to many before, but it's about a piece of driftwood that we have in our garden back home in Retter in South Greenland, where I come from. That piece of driftwood probably originated from some of the Siberian rivers. And I think that's a picture of the necessity of this cooperation, because it's not only driftwood, this beautiful piece of driftwood that comes to our shores. It's also things that we are not interested in, and we have to work together about this common ecosystem that we have, but also in the societies, the communities that we have, to make this region thrive.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you, Gunn-Britt. Let's give them a great round of applause.